Welcome everyone. Today we have with us Mr. Pradip Sagar, a veteran journalist who's been in the industry for more than 17 years in the print and journalism industry, and has written majorly for the defense sector. Is now currently working with the Week magazine, and we are delighted to have him on. Delighted to have him here with us to talk about media. Now, Mr. Sagar, your introduction is the best way to segue into our first question, which basically says 17 years. Like you've been in the industry for quite a long time. What do you think have been the biggest changes, or what are the biggest changes that you've seen in this industry?
First of all, thank you so much, Anuj, for inviting me for the platform. I'm grateful. And I still look at my bio. Okay, yes, I've completed more than seven. In fact, 17 years is the. I've completed nearly 20 years. 17 is the older thing which you have lifted. But anyway, so I've 2001 I started. So now we are into 2020. So
Yeah.
time passes very fast. So I still remember my days when I was struggling, when I just done my journalism from the IMC. Then I was looking for to get a break in the industry. I was looking, since in the family, I was the only guy. There was no godfather. I didn't know anyone in my family, those who in the journalism. So I still remember those days, old days, when I joined Indian Express. Those days used to be newsline section. I don't know whether you are aware of it or not. The city section used to be a newsline. They used to be called a newsline. Nowadays, there's no separate newsline for the city. So as a cub reporter, you join in the newsline section. That is the city section. So I still remember that day when my metro editor Deeptosh Majumdar, I was, and nowadays he's no more, and God save his hand. And so he used to give me those. So I still remember my first story when I'd gone for assignment, all sorts of things. So time passes very fast, yes. And now you're talking about how it has changed. It has changed drastically. In fact, if I see those days, TV was not very much into it. So
Okay.
TV was slowly and gradually getting into the mode of journalism. Like although Ashtak and I think the Z News had started their 24/7 news channel. Otherwise, newspaper was the only mode of communication. There was no, forget about the social media platform which we are using nowadays.
Yeah.
So those days are completely different. So journalism has changed a lot. In fact, I would say there's a 360-degree change in the journalism. But I'll still say the basics of journalism, the core of journalism will always remain. So the changes, if you're asking me the changes, yes, of course. Nowadays, the news, when we were in, like if you're talking about 2001 time, so 2001 we used to go around and meet, like I was covering crime. As a cub reporter, I was given the crime and Delhi police. So we used to go, and there was no mobile phone. In fact, I would like to share, there was no mobile phone. Thankfully, I was not carrying any mobile phones those days. So just in the morning, we used to call up my metro editor, Mr. Deeptosh Majumdar. Sir, I'll be going to this. In fact, most of the time we did not even use. So there was no constant touch with the office.
Yeah.
So when you reach office in the evening by 6:30, then we file our stories. So the community, there was no constant touch with the office. So you are free to do whatever you want to do. You can meet your sources, spend good time with them, then chit chat, and stories. You always get stories. I always feel you always get stories when you are chatting to your sources freely. If
Yeah.
somebody calls you to give you a story, that's a plant. We will call it a plant. But if you actually do a story, unless you talk to an officer in a free mode, that could be over the drinks, over even while smoking, that is the time when you get best stories. So those days we used to have an ample time to develop all sorts of relationship, which I'm missing nowadays. Nowadays, even though I'm meeting and even a friend, there is always this thing. I'm always connected with the phone. My office and my anybody can connect me, can contact me anytime. Will always attract. We are quite habitual to the platform of like Twitter. Twitter is an addiction nowadays. You keep checking your phones Twitter, even the WhatsApp also, the WhatsApp platforms also nowadays. There are many things. Yes, if you ask me the change, yes, there's a 360-degree change. If you ask me, yes,
Right.
Anuj.
So you talked about Twitter and how Twitter has now become an addiction, and there are so many different new technologies coming up. How is the week, which is majorly a print magazine, which is something that people want to keep in their hands? How is the week tackling with all of this, and what are the new technologies that they are taking up to get content out to their readers?
No, as far as our week is concerned, our magazine, we have a separate we have a separate team. Like a team work for the online section, and there's a proper team for the print section.
Yeah.
Though we generally contribute to our we contribute regularly contribute to our online section also, yes. But there, yes, of course, we need to maintain a balance in that also. But and
Mhm.
the week is basically the primarily the focus is on the subscription based. So
Mhm.
we always do stories keeping in mind our readers. We don't follow the trend. What is happening now? We all are like I don't know whether you've noticed or not, but the tagline of week is the journalism with the human touch. So in that way we are balanced. We are maintaining a balance in that. We are, of course, we need to do the online stories, yes, quickly, or the breaking part is also there. Apart from online, we regularly do analysis based stories also for online. Here I'm talking about the online section only. If you're asking me the online thing, the analysis base, a deep dive, basically a deep dive, what do we call it, as a deep dive
Yeah.
into what has happened. So although the online team generally looks after the breaking part,
Okay.
and as we as a senior journalist, we always look into the deep dive stories, the stories with more depth, if we can give more depth. Otherwise that is of course we have any exclusive the breaking story, yes, they are most welcome, yes.
Right. So, how often do these two teams collaborate, or how often does a magazine's content, which is usually produced very slow and with a lot of deep dive and analysis, put online for readers to access it? Like, how often do these two teams collaborate?
No, of course. As I told you, Anuj, I work for the Week magazine, so our focus first is on the print. So
Yeah.
we generally the online section, whatever, because ours is a subscription based and over the counter sale also.
Yeah.
So generally, what happens, the stories which we publish, our focus is on the people should pick the magazine and read it. It's not everything should be available on internet. So like during the lockdown period, when the circulation was not on, when it was not smooth, we were not being able to sell our to deliver our copies to our subscribers. Those days the PDF, we used to circulate the PDF over the phone and other email. But when it comes to circulation, yes, our focus is always on the over the sale counters or subscription. Generally, like our magazine comes out, hits the stand normally by
Mm.
Friday.
Okay.
We always wait for 2 to 3 days and online, and we upload our stories 2 to 3 days later. And
Mm.
before those, we publicize our stories on social media. Like this is the cover. This is the cover. Like this week, we have a cover on the best hospitals. So we
Okay.
publicize our cover stories on online as well as on the other social media platforms. So,
Mm.
but the exact story, the story will be available 2 days. Generally, this is the format we follow. The 2 days after the magazine hits the extent. Now, normally by Saturday evening or by Sunday morning. Yeah.
All right. And are those
So
stories free for people to read online, or do they have to pay there as well?
no, yeah, there are subscription based also. Yes, you're right. There are subscription magazine
Yeah.
subscription is online subscription is also there. No, but if I remember correctly, yes, of course, anybody can read from our online. Anybody can read. Go and check those stories. Yeah.
So how is that affecting the magazine sales? Like, why would someone not wait for the article to come out online for free and read it, rather purchase a subscription or even a single magazine?
It's a challenge for our circulation team. But still, Anuj, I would feel there are readers who who actually read magazine. in hand. They prefer to read in hand. Still, there are people. There may be the generation. Some young generation may not be comfortable with reading in hand stories. They will be more comfortable on reading on online or maybe on mobile phone. But there are readers who are generally like we keep getting calls from our readers. They're not getting magazine, even though it's available on online, but still they wait for the hard copies. They always ask for the hard copies. So our subscription based is the main this thing. We target the subscription for the sale counter. These are the main things, and keeping, of course, as you rightly said, the online is always the main thing. Yeah.
Right. You said that the for the week subscriptions is the main business line, and subscriptions is how they sustain the business. So, do you think paying for journalism is the ultimate solution to the problems haunting the news media industry right now? The problems being the poor editorial standards, fake news, and propaganda and hate that is usually in the news media these days.
Yeah, yes, rightly, yes. Anuj, this is what I just said in the beginning. Stick to the basics. One should instead, if you ask me personally, always feel the old school of journalism is always the better option.
Yeah.
Good stories. How can we give a readers friendly story? And we should not follow the trend what people are doing just to sell few copies or just to get more hits. We should not go for the yellow journalism type of this thing. We don't support any we I'm here I'm talking as an independent, as a journalist. I don't support the yellow journalism at all. I mean, one should stick to the basics of journalism, and the objective reporting, the fair and objective reporting without any propaganda. And we should not be made tools by any section of society.
Right. So, you said that journalists shouldn't become tools in the hands of someone else's. But thing is, in today's world, in today's situation, journalists are becoming tools for some of the people who maybe run the country. So, and because of which our country is now polarized at a level which we haven't seen before. How can the media help us reduce this polarization, or what can the media do within the industry to make sure that they do not become puppets of someone else?
I don't. First of all, I don't agree the people have become puppet, and it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that some of our colleagues have got into that trap. It is very unfortunate. But and the damage which was done is the social media, especially the fake news part. If you ask me, the fake news has turned out to be a major issue of credibility of journalism. Fake news, like, and credibility, as we taught in the journalism, is credibility is like virginity. Once you lose you lost it forever. So that this is what we were taught in journalism. So yes, credibility is an issue. Yes, you're right, credibility is an issue, but we need to balance it. We need to balance it between the rat, between the just to get some hits, just to get more publicity and the news. One should not follow all those things. And I'm repeatedly saying the objective, fair, objective, the propaganda or the other, it will not last. Otherwise things would have changed long time back. I think the balance, the core of journalism will always remain the same. And if you ask me, I cannot say as a media and management side. From the management, I cannot comment from the management side. But if you ask me as a journalist, yeah, credibility is the main issue. One should always maintain the credibility, even if you're writing a 140 words, 140 items on the Twitter, even a small thing. One should be very careful whatever he or she is tweeting.
Right. So, do you think the editorial standards of the news media industry have reduced now?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. If you ask me, because Because if you ask me, in my entire career, I worked in many organizations. I don't think the standards have gone down. No, there are journalists and there are good journalists in the country. I would say those who are maintaining this, there may be exceptions. I don't want to say on all those things, but the majority of the journalists are very good. If you ask me personally, they are very conscious keeper. They believe in good journalism and the objective and the fair journalism. They do believe. In fact, I'm a very regular visitor to the press club, and we keep chit chatting about all those things. And I have the journalists whom I normally interact. I always have a full respect for them.
And
There may be some people you can say, of course.
so you basically mean to say that
un-
few exceptions cannot be examples. Is that the
yeah,
case?
yes, that's it. These could be aberrations. You can't say that the journalism credibility has gone down because of the propaganda, because of there are journalists, good journalists, and in fact, if you follow the mainstream media, then whether it's a newspaper, whether the magazines, whether news TV channels, some may be following some agenda. I don't want to say on those, but majority of journalists are sticking to the basics of journalism. Yeah, this is what I feel. Because of few, you cannot paint the entire community. Okay, the journalism, the credibility of journalism has gone down. No, not at all. There may be exceptions, as you rightly said. The majority of the journalists, Indian journalists, if you ask me, the mainstream media, I cannot say about the other journalists. If uh, in my entire career of nearly 20 years, I've interacted more than I can't even count the numbers, but there are good journalists, very good journalists, and beyond a good journalist, they are good human beings also. They are not into anybody's hand. They are not. They don't get into any tools. There may be some stories which, of course, we do we generally we do as a plant. But anyway, fine. But most of the journalists, they do their basics. They stick to the follow basics basically.
Right, then what are some of the steps that readers or viewers should take to make sure that they do not start following the journalists who are not doing the basic or not following the basic steps?
As a reader, if you're a very conscious reader, if you read a lot, you can make out if you read 10 or 5 media houses, media the outlet of websites or even the newspapers, you could easily make out, okay, this report yesterday the so and so gentleman has done, and next day he's writing something else. And nowadays everybody is smart enough to understand, okay, this is what he's trying to say. The other day he was saying something else, next day he's saying something else. So readers are also very smart nowadays, so they can also understand. I don't want to say on the any particular media houses which should not be, no, but it is up to the reader, because reader can easily identify if the reader generally goes to the 2 3 newspapers or even the magazine or even the news channel, you can easily identify, okay, this is what the journalist is saying. Yeah.
I said these days readers do not have the time to go through two, three papers or maybe the different versions of the same topic or the same breaking news. So, what are the few things that they can do apart from looking at multiple sources to make sure that they are not falling in a pit or being fed a certain agenda?
No, that's a purely personal thing. Like you write some for a particular writer, which I may not like. So that's a very individual approach one should have. I don't like. There are journalists which you actually would like to read. Okay,
Mm,
oh, that is a particular byline by so and so journalist. But
mm.
that is a very individual thing, I would say. But so if you ask me as a reader, I can easily go through so that I could make out. Okay, the credibility part and other thing, that is quite sensible enough nowadays. Readers are also very sensible enough. They can understand.
Right. You also talked about fake news. What are the few steps that the week has taken to stop or curb fake news?
Yeah, as far as asking my organization is, yes, we are very particular about the fake news. We don't follow. This is a clear cut instruction, like the old school. it's better to drop a story instead of doing a wrong story. So
Okay.
we stick to the basics of that thing. Of course, we don't okay, even though it's trending on Twitter. Like other day, I would give an example. Some news was there which was just trending, the airstrike on POK. You have also
Yeah.
seen airstrike. Everybody was tweeting about it. It was trending on Twitter and other platforms. So everybody was tweeting about it, the AVV Indian the POK. But immediately, because I checked, yeah, I also got a call from one of my colleagues. Although that gentleman is not the defense beat as per se, but my as some Twitter handle some Twitter handles are doing some Twitter handle is doing the running the story of the surgical strike. So I immediately checked with the army sources. The army guys categorically denied, no, there's no such strike. So I told my online team also, please don't jump the gun, wait.
Hmm.
So and I immediately tweeted, this is what okay. The immediately even the many senior journalists were tweeting about it. And it was purely based on a news agency report, which somehow we were talking about the 13th of November strike. So yesterday was the best example. We followed the basic. We did not go by what was trending on Twitter or other platform. In fact, it was so attractive nowadays. You can get many hits just because of if you take the hashtag so and so. But we did not do. We did not do the because as I told you in the beginning, the credibility is the main is the core of our this thing. If we want, we should never. So check, recheck, and recheck. One should always cross check. This is the basics we were taught in the journalism. A reporter, a journalist should always cross check his facts, his or her facts. He should not be the overconfident. Okay, somebody called you. Okay, Pradip, this is what has happened. No, it might give me if I tweet something, it might give me some followers or maybe new followers or maybe some retweets. No, but but the cross checking of the facts is very important. So as if you ask me, as a my organization has been very my organization is very particular about it to do the credibility, the due diligence before doing any stories. Because and that is why you must have seen the week reports. We always follow the objective, fair, and balanced journalism. And always take the other version also. Or
Hmm.
we talk to the all section of the person involved in the story. We don't go by one person, what one person has told us, okay, on the basis of so and so. So we always cross check, we always do the due diligence by talking to variety of people. What do they have to say on the issue? By talking to our sources, by talking to the ministry officials. So we are very particular and very strict about our this thing. And this is the survival. If we don't follow the credibility principle, so then it will be, as you yourself has pointed out, the credibility crisis, which is going to hit anytime if we don't do.
So the credibility crisis, as I talked to you, I believe is already here. Like because on the internet now, everyone's a publisher. Everyone can write any content anywhere they want. Most of them do not have the credibility principle or do not even know about the credibility principle because they aren't trained in the craft. How do we tackle that? Do you think that the social space should be regulated so that content is checked before it's published? Like what are do you have any ideas on how we can tackle this?
Yeah. Yes, Anuj, you rightly reminded me. One of my young colleague
Hmm.
who just who was very new to the profession. He just other day just called me. Ki Pradeep sir, there's a story in so and so. He quoted some website. There's a story on the media refueler, the Indian Air Force requirement for the media refueler. Very fascinating story. It was looking so fascinating. The story gave so much of recounts of Iraq operation, even the US forces, all sorts of things. It was so he called me, sir, there's a story. Should we run the story? So I said, please. Let me don't go by whatever is there in the in the public domain. It may looks fascinating, it may looks attractive, but you should always wait and cross check at your end. Don't go by the whatever available on the public domain. As you rightly said, there are many multiple platforms, social media entity, which websites which are running, and they're doing so. No, there may be, they have their own business interests, they could be but as a journalist, if you're working, that is the my prime responsibility, that the I represent that organization. So whatever comes in my name, of course, it reflects my organization also. So I represent my organization. So and beyond organization, of course, your own credibility. So whatever is available on the public domain, one should never ever trust immediately. They should, as a media person, you should always cross check, doubly, triple. In fact, nowadays it's not doubly. I would say that the 5 times one should, even the 10 times before writing anything. It's better to delay a story. It's better to delay a story rather than going for a wrong story. In fact, in those days when we started our journalism, we were told, if you're in doubt, cut it out. This was the funda we were given in the editing thing. When you're in doubt, cut it out. So that was the tagline. So don't go by, if you have any sort of, if you have any iota of doubt in your mind, don't write it. Because if you as a journalist, you are not convinced with the story, how can you convince your readers?
Right. So,
And if because reader depends me. Like if a reader follow Pradip Sagar on the Twitter, he has some sort of acceptation, acceptability. Okay, right. And the freedom of, like, in the name of freedom of press, the freedom always comes with the responsibility. That you will always agree. It is my responsibility to write. Okay, my reader has put a trust in me, so it is my responsibility to maintain that trust.
you said you would rather prefer delaying a story than putting out something which you're not really confident about. Do you think that is something which still holds true in today's world when most of the stories are actually produced online and have to be put up in like 10 minutes that the story has broken?
I agree. Of course, the time constant is the main thing, especially in the online nowadays. So of course, time is a constant, is a bigger challenge, but it should not be compromised on the quality of products. The quality and the credibility should not be compromised in the race. That I agree. That I follow the principle, and I keep telling my younger colleagues, the credibility, one should never forget the credibility. It should not be compromised at all. Even though if you delay the story, better. Okay, delay it. You should not be hurry.
I said dignity and responsibility, these things matter to you because you have the freedom and the privilege of press and the freedom of press. Do you think in today's India that still exists? With journalists being
Yes.
jailed and getting death threats day in and day out? Is this something which still exists in India?
Yeah, very much. Of course, I told you these are aberrations could be there. There are exceptions, of course. This is what I told you in the beginning also, in an earlier part. Majority of the journalists, they in India, they follow this thing, and death threats, and it's all part and parcel of this thing. These are, it happens. In fact, we as a journalist, we follow many legal suits. Many people, if we the legal hassles, it's the professional hazards is also there. Yes, I agree on this. And there are professional hazards, but one should not compromise on the quality, on the credibility part. So that is one that is there. And I told you, the freedom of press. If you're talking about the freedom of press, then the responsibility is also there, gentlemen. Responsibility, you cannot run away from the responsibility. If people follow me as a journalist, so I have the responsibility. And people, okay, if I write for my magazine, for my newspaper, for my media house, people can sue me. In fact, in my career, I have seen many legal cases also. If I've done story, so people will drag you to the court also. But if you're confident in none of the cases, none of the things, okay, it happens to me because we generally follow the basics of journalism. We follow the all sorts of things, all the documentation, all the evidences. So that's happened, and these are professional hazards. One should not. I would say the afraid of doing stories. We should highlight corruption also to bring out the dirt in the society. That is our responsibility also. Yes, we should keep doing. And there are you're saying death threats and all, it's thing, but it's not in a major. It's not going to affect the journalism. I don't think so.
Right. I think we're very close to coming to the end of this interview. I would now pull you into a surprise rapid fire round of sorts where I'll ask you three questions, of which I want one line answers. And they are really simple questions. The first one being uh, advice to a social media news consumer.
The credibility first and foremost. The credibility. Whoever the social media consumer is following, he or she should check the credibility of the media house or the platform.
A request to your fellow colleagues.
Request to my fellow colleagues: should not get into the trap of trending or getting few hits. No, it's better to leave a story, to drop a story, than to do a wrong story.
And a line of wisdom to an upcoming journalist.
A line of wisdom:
Yeah.
stick to the basics, which we were taught in the school of journalism. Stick to the basic.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Sagar. It was a pleasure talking to you, and hearing your thoughts on an industry gives me hope that not all is lost, and there are still a bunch of and a huge bunch of journalists who are doing fantastic work and will keep this industry and democracy and alive. And I just hope that we get to see more of you and journalists like you, and read more content from you and journalists like you, rather than content which really doesn't add value to our lives. Thank you so much for your time. Request to your fellow colleagues or peers.
I would request them uh, don't misguide the people of India.
An advice to a social media news consumer.
I think we should start subscribe good Facebook pages and good Twitter profiles to get good information.
An advice to an upcoming journalist, someone who is just starting out.
So when you come into industry, you should keep in the one thing in your mind, that you are a voice of people.